I should take the smirk off my face, but it is a fact. Every time Jim Jordan brings his circus together, it's called a hearing, he just literally exposes himself to, well, the buffoon and buffoonery he surrounds his gathering of clowns. It's a circus, really. Plaskett and Raskin, home run.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to introduce into the record, I know one of the witnesses said he had difficulty putting something together for you. I'm so glad that the staff was able to actually, using ChatGPT, just have a poem written about you.
I look forward to reading it.
In the halls of Congress, may I, if I could just read, where debates ignite. I just love.
You can enter it into the record, but.
It even talks about the heartlands of Ohio. Thank you.
I appreciate it.
You're welcome.
I appreciate it. I'm sure there'll be many poems coming from the Democrats about me in the near future.
It's very uplifting.
Well, that's wonderful. I would expect nothing less.
Thank you. Neither I.
The chair now recognizes himself. Mr. Fung, what happened?
It is considered as read. I reserve a point of order. The gentleman from Maryland is recognized for 5 minutes to explain his amendment.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. The purpose of the amendment is to make sure that the PBM reforms work as intended by increasing transparency around their business models. The amendment would require PBMs and health plans to disclose relevant information to federal employee health benefits program carriers, FEHB program carriers, as determined by OPM. OPM would determine which information would help the carriers negotiate the best healthcare coverage and prescription drug costs for federal employees and promulgate reporting requirements through the federal rulemaking process. Chairman Comer, I think you and I agree that if PBMs are working as intended, they serve an important role in negotiating lower drug costs and ensuring patients can get the medications they need. And I think we also agree that we have a drug affordability and accessibility crisis in the country, and the current way PBMs operate is playing a role in exacerbating it. But despite this committee's efforts to engage on the subject and hold substantive hearings, Congress and Americans still do not have a complete understanding of how PBM practices operate and how they may be contributing to high prescription drug costs and reduced accessibility to medication. I have in my possession a fact sheet from the sponsoring office, Representative Miller Meeks, of the Drug Act. And while I commend the legislative motivations behind the bill, it's unclear how much evidence there is to support claims that the bill will, quote, increase coverage of lower cost alternatives, including generics and biosimilars, and generate savings for employers and plan sponsors. I share those goals, and I want to be sure that the bill will actually achieve them, but it's hard to be sure that the changes proposed will accomplish those objectives if the features of PBM operations remain shrouded in secrecy and darkness. Although we've heard that practices like rebate negotiation and spread pricing may increase costs for patients while enriching PBMs, without an understanding of the remuneration PBMs may obtain from rebates, fees, and other discounts, and from practices like spread pricing, we don't have complete insight into the ways in which PBM practices may be a contributing factor of our drug affordability crisis. It's clear we need increased transparency within the PBM market to make sure Congress and the people understand the role they play in our very complex, needlessly complex healthcare system. With this understanding, Congress can enact more effective policy solutions. In fact, in a memo requested by the sponsor of this bill, Ellis Health Policy specifically said combining delinking, as this bill would do, along with greater transparency, which is the purpose of my amendment, we would be generating additional savings and reducing premiums. And this should be a bipartisan commitment. In fact, the Lower Costs, More Transparency Act that was passed by the House in December with bipartisan support included significant reporting requirements for health plans and PBMs meant to shed light on the inner workings of the PBMs. But that bill did not apply to the federal health benefits program. My amendment to this bill models the House-passed language in the Lower Costs, More Transparency Act and would require PBMs to report similar information to carriers that participate in the federal health benefits program as determined by OPM. For example, the Lower Costs, More Transparency Act requires PBMs to report information related to PBM spending on drugs dispensed to patients, the amount reimbursed by PBMs to pharmacies for dispensing those drugs, and the remuneration received by the PBM from drug manufacturers. By having a better understanding of PBM within the healthcare supply chain, FHB carriers will be better informed to ensure that patients will end up coming out on top. I urge my colleagues to support the amendment. I yield back to you, Mr. Chairman.
Chair now recognizes himself for an opening statement. Today, we continue the Select Committee's work at looking into the government's efforts with big tech to censor speech. First, it was Twitter. When Elon Musk took over the company, he called it a crime scene and released information through Matt Taibbi and Michael Schellenberger, two journalists who we've had in front of this committee a couple times, showing that the government was deeply involved in the content moderation decisions at Twitter. Then it was Facebook, where folks from the White House, Andy Slavitt, Rob Flaherty, were telling the company to take down posts that they disagreed with. The White House pressured Facebook to censor true information and even told them to take down a meme. Then it was YouTube. Biden White House said, "Why aren't you guys at YouTube taking down more, quote, borderline content," which is content, speech that doesn't violate YouTube's policies, just content and speech that they didn't like, didn't agree with their narrative. Both Facebook and YouTube caved to the White House pressure because they knew they had to keep good relationships with the White House for important policy decisions. We call that coercion. Then we learned how they all teamed up, big government, big tech, big academia, working together to censor Americans in the lead up to the 2020 election through the Election Integrity Partnership and the Virality Project. This partnership, created at the request of the federal government, sent thousands of links directly to big tech to be censored. True information was targeted. Jokes weren't safe either. Even members of this committee were targeted. Congressman Massey, we've discussed that throughout this Congress in several different hearings. And it wasn't just conservatives. It was mostly conservatives, but it wasn't just conservatives. And yesterday we shared what we've uncovered about the White House pressuring Amazon. Internal Amazon emails are unbelievable. It says, think about this one. Is the administration asking us, we put this out in a Twitter thread yesterday, is the administration asking us, Amazon, asking us to remove books, or are they more concerned about search results, or both? Stop and think about it. Government pressuring Amazon to ban books. Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, all this big combination to impact election, and now we find the same thing was happening, the same dynamic was happening at Amazon. Today's hearing, how the government is trying to take censorship to the next level by weaponizing artificial intelligence tools to limit speech in real time and at scale. In the name of combating alleged misinformation regarding COVID-19 in the 2020 election, the National Science Foundation has been issuing multi-million-dollar grants to universities and nonprofit research teams to develop artificial intelligence-powered censorship and propaganda tools. These tools can be used by government and big tech to shape public opinion by restricting certain viewpoints and promoting others. In notes from the University of Michigan's first presentation to the National Science Foundation about its NSF-funded AI-powered, called WiseDex tool, they said this, quote, so this is when the University of Michigan is making their pitch to the government to get taxpayer money. They said, our misinformation service helps policymakers at platforms who want to push responsibility for difficult judgment to someone outside the company by externalizing the difficult responsibility of censorship. Think about that last phrase, by externalizing the difficult responsibility of censorship. They said right up front what they want to do. They want taxpayer money coming to them so they can develop tools with AI to censor American speech. I don't know if it gets much scarier than that. Non-public documents obtained by the Select Committee reveal the disinformation researchers referring to their work as, quote, censorship in the slides they presented to the National Science Foundation. The National Science Foundation tracked reporting critical of its program, including an article written by Professor Jonathan Turley and by Ms. Richardson, one of our witnesses today. And they developed a specific media strategy they considered blacklisting, and they considered blacklisting conservative media. In one project proposal document to the National Science Foundation, the researchers explained the need for a, quote, proactive suite of human technologies to assist rural and indigenous communities, military veterans, older adults, and military families, all of whom the researchers claimed were unusually susceptible to misinformation campaigns online. I want you to digest that for a second. If you're an older American, you served in our military, and you live out in flyover country, you're too stupid to know what's true. And these guys wanted their tax money, our tax money, the very people they described, they took their tax money to develop tools to censor the people that they took the tax money from. Another project proposal sent to the National Science Foundation demeans Americans who hold, quote, the Bible and the Constitution as sacred and choose to review primary sources rather than rely on expert consensus. You think the Bible's sacred, you support the Constitution, and you review primary sources to think for yourself, you're the problem, according to the National Science Foundation, and they're going to give your tax dollars to entities developing software, developing this technology, this tool, to censor your speech. One other proposal document said this: reactive content moderation is too slow and ineffective. And that's what this hearing's about. AI, which can censor in real time and at scale, should scare us all. The pattern we've seen emerging is deeply troubling, but for the work of this committee, we'd have never known about all the censorship going on, and now we're concerned, obviously, about how artificial intelligence can interact, can use these tools, develop these tools to censor and restrict American speech. I want to thank our witnesses for being here today, and with that, I would yield to the ranking member for an opening statement.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you to our witnesses for all being here, being a part of the discussion, expressing your ideas and the work that you have been engaged in. But I do have to say that we sit here today in another iteration of the same hearing we've had over and over again in the 118th Congress. The sixth hearing of the same topic, a merry-go-round of Republican greatest rejections of conspiracy theories. We are here to attempt to once again discuss the same issue in a different way. Not once has my colleague, the chairman, requested any ideas from my side as to what we might agree on discussing as the weaponization of the federal government. I would say the IRS propensity to audit working class people, and especially people of color, rather than wealthy individuals, can show some weaponization of the federal government, or a book banning and censorship in schools and school districts receiving federal funding. As with many hearings, my Republican colleagues don't really want us to work together. Chairman Jordan has allowed his staff to provide the bare minimum notice for hearings without a subject or identifiable topic, without publicly announcing who the witnesses are, without even the decency to tell the minority anything. I know that we've come to think that that's normal, but that's not how Congress has always worked. This is, in fact, the sixth time in this select subcommittee that a hearing of ours has had the exact same name: Hearing on the Weaponization of the Federal Government. That's a broad topic and could mean anything. For the minority to prepare to engage with the majority with such a topic just is further demonstration how far we are from actually doing work. This is about platform. This is about speaking to Fox News. This is not about solving problems for the American people. We've come so far from what Congress has been, even in the short time that I've been here, which I can't believe is almost a decade now. It's shameful. So, I'll use my side in our discussion to talk about what we think is the weaponization of the federal government, what we believe to be the real threat to our democracy and the rule of law, the attempted weaponization of the federal government during the Trump administration, or even more frightening, the extreme weaponization of the federal government that the former president has told us he will do if he is reelected. Just since our last hearing, the fifth hearing, former President Trump has made more terrifying statements on the weaponization of the federal government should he have a second term. Donald Trump has said he will, quote, act like a dictator on day one of any second term. He has said he would proudly claim full credit for overturning Roe v. Wade, a woman's protection from overbearing state and her right to privacy. He's argued in court as a legal argument that he would have full immunity as president even if he ordered the assassination of individual Americans. He says he's going to lay off thousands of non-political career diplomats, replacing experienced government experts that serve with distinction with individuals whose main quality is passing a loyalty test to him. He has vowed to appoint a special prosecutor just to go after Joe Biden and his entire family, threatening them multiple times because he doesn't like them and they are a threat to him, not to our country. Trump and his followers are obsessed with charging Biden or any Biden individual for a set of wildly changing charges with a real set of projection in that to things that he himself and his own family have done, for charges that our congressional Republicans still cannot seem to produce documents or their own witnesses to corroborate. Now, one of the other statements that I gave to you a little earlier, to remove non-political career diplomats with individuals who are willing to take a loyalty pledge, is also very troubling. It should be obvious to anyone that replacing these qualified people en masse with expressly political operatives of any stripe would undermine Americans' interests and is the hallmark of a fascist state. And finally, the sick, audacious notion that a president could order the assassination of an American citizen at will without a single legal consequence runs aground of every American sense of right and wrong. That is what Donald Trump argues he can do. Not in public speeches alone that could just be campaign promises or rhetoric, but in a federal court filing where his attorneys must put the argument requested and discussed with their client, Donald Trump. Donald Trump believes as president that he can deploy, let's think about this, the American military on American soil to attack an American target, an individual, which, in this hypothetical example, has not declared any form of hostility towards the American state itself, but is merely who the president believes is not his friend or agrees with him. This idea is, and this is my own legal parlance, the craziest illegal, dictatorial, despotic, demagoguery, autocratic crap I've ever heard. Today, the chair is going to have us go through another round of claims about the weaponization that are his witnesses' beliefs about social media on the part of the federal government. The chair and my Republican colleagues on this subcommittee will ignore or try to make light of or even mock the unmistakable promises Donald Trump has made to weaponize the government on his own behalf. Where are the hearings about a former president who believes he can use the federal government to kill his political opponents? Where is the hearing about a president who believes that the most important quality of his appointments to run the greatest and most important country in the world is that they are loyal solely to him? Where is the hearing to discuss, never mind Trump, but even the idea? Let's not just make it about Trump. Let's have a hearing about the idea of a president using the resources of the federal government, the appointment of a special prosecutor to go after those he deemed to be the enemy, not of this country, not of this ideals, but of national security, but of himself. And if you don't think I am thinking this, if you don't think that this is my thought and important to me, let's take it from the word of people who work directly with the man. John Bolton, former National Security Advisor to Donald Trump. I think Trump will cause significant damage in a second term, damage that in some cases will be irreparable. John Kelly, his former chief of staff, said in a second term, it's just simply would be chaotic because he'd continually be trying to exceed his authority, but the sycophants would go along with it. It would be a nonstop gunfight with the Congress and the courts. Bill Barr, President Trump's former Attorney General, I think for people going into that second term of Trump administration, I think they have to be ready to oppose the abuse of government power. That's the weaponization of the federal government. But I don't think that's ever going to be a topic that the majority is going to bring for us. So we, the majority, will have to bring it for you. And with that, I yield back.
Without objection, all of the